Toll in Syria has surpassed 5,000 as violence rages on between government forces and rebel fighters. And today, a debate at the UN Security Council continues over what to do about the conflict. The West calling on Syria President Bashar al-Assad to step down. They support a resolution they say is aimed at bringing peace and stability to Syria. But Russia and China say they will veto the text because they say it paves the way for the West to intervene militarily. Russia and China says regime change is not their business. RT's Anastasia Churkina joins us live now from our studio in New York to bring us the latest. Welcome, Anastasia. So are they any closer there to coming to an agreement?
Well, Liz, definitely the events of the last couple of days have been unraveling pretty quickly. As we know, the Arab League and the West, spearheaded by the U.S., have been pushing for a regime change resolution against Syria that would call for President Assad to step down. If this was not done, within 15 days, the international community would be allowed to conduct, quote, further measures. And of course, this is something that Russia and China have said they would not support. So the last couple of days have been, days filled with very heated debate and discussions on really still trying to find a compromise. But positions have been quite different so far. But we are hearing that earlier today, it looks like Russia's and China's voices were heard, because we're hearing that a new document has been circulating at the Security Council that does not apply the terminology of regime change anymore, possibly, and reportedly. We're going to have to wait and see whether or not this is going to be the case. And we have heard from the president of the Security Council, Togo, the country presiding this month, that talks are really being discussed as something very important between the Syrian government and the opposition. And this is something that Russia has been voting for and calling for this entire time.
So it looks like the West is willing to take some of that controversial language out in order to please Russia and China.
Well, we'll have to wait and see whether that happens, but definitely that is the main sticking point right now. The U.S. and the Arab League basing this important resolution on regime change, and Russia and China, as you said that's not their job. They're not going to try to impact ousting somebody. It's really the business of the Syrian people. So we're going to have to wait and see really whose positions wins. But definitely Russia has been a game changer in this whole scenario because of if Russia and China don't agree, a text cannot pass. So it's one of those cases where they have to find a compromise. Otherwise, they can't vote on anything.
Anastasia, also want to bring to your attention to something that Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said during talks yesterday. She said, quote, "Every member of the council has to make a decision. Whose side are you on? Are you on the side of the Syrian people, or are you on the side of a brutal dictatorial regime?" So what do you make of this? Clinton painting this as black or white. You're either on the good side or you're on the evil side.
Well, Liz, we've certainly heard that kind of language coming from the United States before. It's been a traditional bad guy versus good guy. You're either with us or you're against us. This kind of language has been all too popular during the Bush era. In this particular case, the United States had tried to convince the international community that unless you support this particular regime change text, you are really supporting and not standing united with the Syrian people, according to the United States. But the problem here is that this particular crisis in Syria, it's not, standing against the government or standing along with the people, because what we're talking about is opposition groups and government groups. So it's really not a matter of finding the bad guy, picking him and trying to get rid of him, and then everything will magically become better. That has not been the case. And that's what Russia has been saying is, guys, look, there are armed forces on the ground, and if we push for regime change, those armed forces who are in fact still involved in killing civilians as well, which has also been found by an Arab League report, the situation is not going to become better. So, all this terminology can be used as much as wanted onto this humanitarian veil of good goals, but unfortunately life is not that easy for the U.S. So another kind of language is going to have to be used, and it is being used most likely. Otherwise, there will be no solution.
Lastly, Anastasia, I want to ask you what to expect in the coming days. Any word on when a vote will be?
Well, we're hearing that there's no specific deadline. We know that the international community and the Security Council is trying to come up with a resolution as soon as possible because they realize that something is needed, some sort of strong message is needed. They're working almost round the clock to make that happen, and we did hear that likely it's possible that within the next 2 days, one of the versions we've heard that Monday is a possible day for a vote, but that depends on how successful the talks are within the next hours and days, really.
Anastasia, thank you for keeping us updated. That was RT correspondent Anastasia Churkina.